Gaffney Lane, Park Place. Here. Hillendale. Tower Vista,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Aye. Here.
Rivercrest, Caulfield. Here. Berkeley Hills.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go directly to the presentation, and first up is Lori Bell.
Hi, I'm Lori Bell. I work for the City of Oregon City in Economic Development and Tourism. Christina asked me to come here today and give you an update on one of the projects I've been working on, so I'm thankful for the time. A little background, just briefly, which you may be familiar with, is that the City of Oregon City adopted a tourism strategy last year, which means that there was a decision made and a resolution to take over sort of tourism and bring all of the United people together from heritage communities and such. So when I started, I was tasked with one specific tourism project, which I've handed out to you one of the deliverables of, which is a little book. It's a little field guide. You can get those at the Oregon City Municipal Elevator. You can get them at the Museum of the Oregon Territory or the end of the Oregon Trail Visitor Center. I just wanted you to see one of those deliverables. The tourism work that the city does is all funded through a travel and lodging tax. Are you guys all familiar with this? So we have a hotel, right? And the hotel gives us a percentage, and those funds are given to the city, and they are specifically allocated for tourism efforts. So because I worked in that project, a couple community members approached me 6 months or so ago and wanted to know how and what the city could do to commemorate 175 years of being a city. And so that's what I want to tell you a little bit more about today. We met internally with our department heads and of course our finance director to talk about what are some of the options and what we could do well and facilitate within budget to commemorate 175 years. We decided to have one episodic event, which is on August 24th at the end of the Oregon Trail Visitor Center. I invite you to share that with everyone. There'll be a concert and all kinds of fun activities. So that is one big celebratory day. In addition to that, we wanted to do some ongoing activities so that we can give people an opportunity to engage over the course of the year. So we have developed a website. It's traveloregoncity.com/175. Also, if you go to Oregon City's website, orcity.org, which is our homepage for the city, there's a little white button that looks a lot like this on the website. And if you click on that, it will also bring you there. It tells you some details of our celebration and how we'll be commemorating 175 years. It also invites stories from the community for people to share with us experiences or historical events that they have learned about or know about from over the years so that we can share those through the calendar year. We've also decided to, with the generosity of Public Works and their equipment, dig a hole and put a time capsule in. So we are open to ideas of what you think we should put in there, what would be memorable pieces of information. And also, we spent some funds to do a little bit of branding and marketing. So I've given you each some sunglasses, beautiful stickers. You may have seen also some beautiful banners that look like this that our Public Works Department, has anybody seen those? Okay, well, if you were in road work on Malala Avenue, you would have seen them because they were right there. Also, there's some on Washington Street and then on 99. So we put them in, sort of the outskirts of town so that visitors driving by will look up and say, hey, what is that? And we can invite them into our event. So these other materials will be given away we have some sanctioned events. So on our website, you can see other activities that are happening throughout the year that are being coordinated by other organizations, so either heritage groups or the library, or different kinds of events and festivals. So if anybody is coordinating an event as such, you can go to our website and find out how to send an email and ask to be a sanctioned event, which means we will give you lots of goodies that you can give out at these events for free, as well as you can purchase these at the end of the Oregon Trail Visitor Center and Museum of the Oregon Territory. So we just decided, in having a big celebration and having an ongoing way for people to share stories and activities and events, that would be a great way to commemorate 175 years. And that's what I wanted to tell you about and see if you have any questions. Okay, well, yes, please.
So, are you gonna have a booth at the concerts in the park?
Yes, we are gonna have a booth, not at every concert, but we will be there this Saturday. The first concert is this Saturday, I believe. I'm not gonna be at the booth, but somebody is. And they'll either have a wheel, they can give out the items as much as they like. So yes, there will be a booth there. There was one at Touch a Truck when the fire trucks and all the public safety workers came down in front of the library. And there's a handful of other events that are listed. Thank you.
Good.
I do have these to give out, but I didn't have enough to give to everyone. So I thought if anybody could tell me what's the name of the website that you could go to learn about it, you could earn a prize. Does anybody know the website?
Travel Oregon City.
Yay for Berkeley Hills!
Yay.
Okay. Can anybody tell me where you can purchase these?
At the elevator?
At the event, the concerts, you're gonna have an event there,
Yep,
okay?
you can buy them there.
Okay.
There's another place that were you gonna say something, Carla?
The end of the Oregon Trail.
The end of the Oregon Trail Visitor Center, there's one for you. Can anybody tell me the day of the celebration for this beautiful?
August 24th.
August 24th, McLaughlin neighborhood.
According to the website, the concerts in the park start July 11th.
That's next Saturday. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Saturday.
It's Thursday. Thank you.
Thursday. Yes, the concerts in the park are Thursday evening.
Oh, that's right, it's a Saturday. Our event is on a Saturday. Thank you, I apologize. And if you don't have any other questions, I'll let you get to your business.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we're gonna go to 2B, Laura.
Hi, thank you very much. Laura Turway, I'm Community Development Director for the city, and I am standing in for Christina. I don't have stuff to give away. I know, but I have a PowerPoint, so that's exciting. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some proposed amendments that we are doing for our municipal code, and then also some updates to our Historic Review Board policies. You've been forwarded some stuff about the policies before, so is everyone kind of familiar with Historic Review Board? The Historic Review Board regulates about 568 properties in the city. So they regulate properties within our Kenema National Register Historic District, our McLaughlin Conservation District, only designated structures or new construction. And then also we have a bunch of designated structures that are neither in either of those historic districts as well. So if you are one of these properties, then you are subject to review by our Historic Review Board, and you're subject to compliance with our historic regulations. There's two separate things going on here. One is that we have Historic Review Board policies that the board it's been on their work plan to update for a long time. And it was delayed a little bit due to some staff changes and other things. But they started working on that on October, and they've had quite a few meetings since October on these updates of these policies. But there's another provision in our code that allows the Historic Review Board to adopt policies. And we are also proposing a code amendment to update the provision of our code. So in the provision in our code, there's two sections that talk about how you implement policies. There's one provision that says you can have policies And if you have policies, you would adopt them administratively. There's other provisions in our code that tells us what administratively means. Then there's a second provision in our code which conflicts with the first, which is the older of the two provisions. And it says you can adopt policies administratively, but it talks about exterior alterations and fences. It says those two things specifically. It doesn't talk about any other types of alterations, or it doesn't provide a lot of specificity. And also, it continues to list out the requirements for what administrative means. And when it keeps going, it's not talking about administrative provisions. Administrative provisions are like you come in, get a permit over the counter, and we issue the permit. But the policy goes on to talk about newspaper notice and notice within 300 feet to show that you're in compliance with these policies. And then if someone wants to object to have a hearing within 10 days, then you have a hearing within a certain amount of time. So there's two things, both say you can adopt administrative policies, and the process for those policies are different. And we want to clear that up. So the purpose for adopting policies for the Historic Review Board in general is that we want people to maintain their historic homes. And in order to do that, we want to make it as easy as possible to go through a review process, to know what the standards are. And in this case, in 1986, we established policies originally to say, if you're going to do these very minimal things, here's what the standard is. If you comply with the standard, you're good to go. You don't have to go before a hearing or anything like that, pay all the money for a process. You can just, if you need to, we want you to repair your windows first, but if you have to replace a window, if you put it in with this exact same wood window, then you're okay. You don't need to go to a board and ask to replace with the exact same wood window. That's an example of one thing that the policies say. So, a little bit confusing, but there's two separate provisions. One is updating the policies themselves, and the other thing is updating the process of how we administer the policies. We adopted policies to make it easier, but then we apparently adopted two sections in the code that says, here's a harder way to do policies and here's an easier way to do policies, and they don't match. And so we want to make sure that they match, because our goal is ultimately transparency, and we want to make sure that people are clear, that they know what to do and what the standards are. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about policies. There's a bit more meat on that bone than the other provision that says we're just changing the administrative part. So we are updating the policies, as I said, to provide clear direction so that people can more easily maintain their home. There's some gray areas in the policies. They should be clear and objective. You should know, like, this is okay, that is not okay. How we apply them, sometimes gray areas show up. And so we want to be as clear as possible. If there's gray areas on the implementation of a policy, it just has to go to the board. So this way we will be very clear on what the policies are, what's allowed, and then you don't have to go to the board. There's been a lot of modern products that have come out on the market since '86, and we've updated them a little bit since then. You can think about composite decking, fiber cement siding, fiberglass windows, on and on. And so the question is, can those be allowed in these places? And are there times when they are allowed and times when they shouldn't be allowed? And so we wanted to talk to the public about that too. And then also we have in here some proposal for a couple of new policies. We had been receiving a lot of questions about solar, both on a building or on the ground, and then also porches and decks too. Could you make some minor improvements to your home without going to the board, or should you go to the board? Those are the outstanding questions. Our comprehensive plan is a basic guideline for the city. I know we have all memorized it, but what it says is we need to encourage people to invest in preservation and rehabilitation of their homes and buildings in historic districts. We need to make it easy. And then there's some other things too. So to update the policies, there is a few Historic Review Board work sessions. We reviewed National Park Service documents and guidance and other best practices. We had a couple of open houses, or this is a picture from one of the open houses. And as I said, Historic Review Board has been working on this since October. There was a work session with the City Commission, and ultimately we're looking at Historic Review Board doing a final document in next month. And then after that, it will go to the City Commission for adoption by resolution. And then through the separate process, we would be amending that process question of how do we process a policy. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of the changes, just so you can kind of see. All of this is also on our website, which is orcity.org, under Historic Review Board policies. So the first question is repair and replacement of siding. So we wanted to know if people thought fiber cement siding was okay or not. And you'll notice in all of these responses, there is some variation of do this thing all the time, do the thing none of the time, or do it some of the time. So Historic Review Board took a long time to try and figure out how to be context sensitive to these. If the policy says no, people still have an opportunity to go to the Historic Review Board and explain why it makes sense in their particular case. So policies are things you can do very, very easy at a staff level. We don't charge you for it. We do it over the counter. And then if you are in that gray area or it says you can't do it and you think you ought to be able to do it, you can always go to the board and make your case. So in this case, they said fiber cement siding is okay on accessory buildings, so things that are not your main house, and on non-contributing structures in Kenema. There, you there. Sorry. Next one is fences and walls. I don't expect you to read that, but again, we asked, should various types of fences be allowed? We listed types of fences that are allowed now and ones that aren't allowed now as well. The goal is just to try and figure out as a community where the public stands on this. And so what we ended up doing is we added definitions and photos for each of the fences so we can clearly explain what we're talking about. And we ended up adding 4 new fence types in front yards and 4 new fence types in side yards and rear yards. We generally treat the front yard to a higher standard than the side and rear yards. Next policy is window repair and replacement. We always encourage repair over replacement. And so we kept the language that talks about that. Next is, the policies talked about in-kind materials. We want to be clearer than that. And so we added more detail about specifically which type of materials and which setting those materials would or wouldn't be allowed. Porches and decking, our proposed policy requires all new front porches to go to Historic Review Board, but it allows staff to review rear decks and porches, and it allows the composite decking like Trex decking on rear decks or detached decks as well. Solar, this is one of the new ones. It requires Historic Review Board for solar panels on the front, street-facing, or highly visible locations, and then it allows staff for the side or rear or places that are less visible. It requires a low-profile panel. As technology has increased, you'll see panels that stick out like 4 inches off the roof and blend in more with color of your home. So, as I identified before, the next steps for this is to go back to Historic Review Board to look at the final adoption of the policy themselves, and then we will also do a resolution for adoption before our City Commission, and then we'll do through a separate process the tweaking of Chapter 1740, that code amendment that tells us how we ought to process the policies. I have a test for you too. No, I don't. I was gonna. So no, I don't have a test for you, but I'm here to answer any questions. Or Kelly Reed is our historic planner. She's obviously not here, but I can stand in for her. But if anyone has any questions on anything, I'm here to answer.
One.
Yeah.
I have one. So it pretty much follows your draft
Yep.
What you just covered? Yes.
Yeah, if the design guideline, sorry, the policies themselves are much more specific. This kind of talked a little bit more general, but yes, we do have, I put in the back, red-lined copies of both the policies and the code amendment itself.
Okay, Linda.
At first blush, it looks like there was a very small group of people who took the census who contributed to what they were saying. I mean, Kanima's a small neighborhood, but McLaughlin's huge. It seems like there's just a very few amount of people who bothered to take the census and put in their input as what they wanted. And then how are you going to get the word out? Some people have lived in their homes for a long, long time, 20, 40 years. And maybe they're gonna get around to put a fence up or a deck on. And my neighbor did that 5 years ago. And they'll just go ahead and do what the neighbor did five years ago. How are you gonna get the word out to these people that those changes made?
Yeah, great question. We did, when we started this project, we sent a postcard to all of the 568 property owners as well, to tell them where to go to the website and how to participate. We would always love more public participation as we go through the process. I think 35 is sticking in my head as far as the number of people who responded to this or who participated. We do have all the comments that we received on our website, and the process is here because we want to hear what people have to say. It clearly dictates what we do. We are a certified local government, and through that, we applied for and received a grant to get an intern for the summer. And so we do have an intern who's going to help us create this text and make them into nice pamphlets or brochures that we can distribute and keep on our website as well, so we can hand them to the neighborhood association and so forth. I mean, these are the kind of things that we use as many resources as we can to get the word out. We rely on you as the CIC and as, to the extent that you would like to, neighborhood associations to help get more people to participate in these things. But we did do a couple of online surveys that had a fair amount of feedback, but we'll do our best, and then we're open for any recommendations to help us.
So I just had a few things. I have a historic home from 1916. I've lived always in historic homes since I've been a homeowner, 3. And so when you talk about windows and changing them possibly to newer windows, possibly your considerations, when a house is old and if my windows are completely sealed, the problem I found with old homes is you can actually create mold inside the homes. So that's one concern if you're allowing various windows other than the traditional old windows with the original wood frames and leaded glass. Number 2 is I have Trek boards on my front deck, which are great, but I could never register as a historic home because of that. I'm okay with that at this point because I can't obviously replace them or maintain them. But it doesn't fulfill the character of the home, in my opinion, to have Trek. If you're trying to be a historical home, it doesn't fit the look, personally, is what I think. And so when you're actually adding new things to a home, you're actually inviting problems to historic homes sometimes. Or a lot of the roofs on these old homes don't have the framing of a new home. So if you actually put the solar panels on, the weight could be detrimental to the roof. Like my old roof actually had beams that weren't supportive to actually take on 3 layers which is now you can't do, but to have 2 layers was pretty much too heavy and actually causes it to drop. So sometimes what my saying is when you're doing new things to an older home, you can invite problems. So that's something to consider. And then I noticed you sent out an attachment, a draft proposal. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention too is fences. It's currently, I've noticed with the neighborhoods, I have a friend who was telling me about her friend who was by Plaid Pantry, and they wouldn't allow her to have a fence above 3 feet high because it's against historic code. Which, she's right by Plaid Pantry, so Plaid Pantry is really noisy at night. And then I'm hearing that there's fences above waterways in certain historic districts that downpour and will lam it. So I'm hoping that if these changes happen, that they actually honor the historical code, but also preserve environmentally what the drainage was before, so that treated lumber isn't going into our water. So that's my concerns about it, to be aware of what we're doing. And the other thing is this draft proposed amendment that you attach to it, that, unless you open it, you see it. I noticed in Exhibit C, it talks about the Grand Ronde, and I was wondering some insight on why that was coming up.
Oh, so this is an excerpt of a portion of our historic review overlay district. And so the proposed amendment changes a subsection. So it really didn't have anything to do with it. It was just in 1740-060. It was in a couple of the first beginning paragraphs. So it talks about archaeological monitoring and recommendations. And we do have this in other provisions in our code for development review, that every time we have a pre-application conference, we send that to a big group of people, and it does include a variety of tribes as well. And to the State Historic Preservation Office. And if any of those entities are aware of some sensitivities underground, or when people are digging, they need to be aware, then they'll send notification to us and we forward it back to the applicant just to be aware. But state law still applies that when you find something, you got to stop. But it's just a way to put people on notice that there's some areas that are probably more sensitive than others, but we're not proposing to touch that. Well, the code amendments underneath it, where this is the provision that we're talking about, this allows Historic Review Board to adopt their own policies, and then the provision that was conflicting was some very old code from, probably some from model code when we became a certified local government, that talks about this other provision. So that's what I was trying to direct you at, but that was a good point. I could have added some language at the front of that to say, like, ignore the text that's not being stricken.
Okay, because the thing that I'm at, we have, obviously Berkeley Hills has few historic homes. There's a lot of, that are registered, but there's a lot of historic homes. We naturally have a creek that was natural to Berkeley Hills that goes through the neighborhood. So there's certain times when it rains really hard that there's a lot of downpour. And currently, there's people not equipped for that. But when you make alterations to these historic homes, there's a lot to take into consideration than, updating something, because it not only it does affect the look of the home, but also the structure and stability, so.
That's a good point. And the historic review overlay and districts are really meant towards protecting the exterior look of the historic thing. And so there are going to be other provisions that we have as far as stream protection or building permits to make sure your structure is safe for solar panels and things like that. But with this lens, we're sort of just looking at what does it look like on the exterior, and that's from that sense. So it doesn't look at fence height in these provisions, but it does look at material.
And then where it's above, possibly, because in the historic neighborhoods, like some of them have environmental factors to play, because these homes were built years ago in convenience of water. So that whatever happens to where the water drains affects our city and our water quality.
Right. And I think you highlight development or anything you do to your home is tricky. And there's a lot of different layers of regulations, and you have to meet all of them. And historic is just one of them, but yes, certainly making sure you're meeting stormwater manual if required, and stream protections, things like that.
Thank you.
Oh, the one other thing you did bring up, this also clarifies for the policies that they apply to new stuff and that you can maintain existing fences and whatever the thing is. We know that we have a lot. If you were to apply our Historic Review Board policies and go look around the city, there's certainly a lot of places that existed before the policies or before the regulations were in place. If they're not, do code enforcement, we'll take a look at it too. But this clarifies that a little bit as well.
Okay, and we have two people who've requested to talk about this presentation, Tima Carlson and Patty Webb. And if you'd both come up and sit at the table and state your name and city of residence, then give us your 3 minutes.
Go ahead if you want.
My name's Tima Carlson. I live in City of Oregon City, within the McLaughlin district. So I had questions. They weren't necessarily comments. And Carla Laws did bring up Section C is specifically my concerns. I do work in the geotechnical industry, so I'm familiar with the archaeological monitoring. City of Vancouver, portions of have implemented the same scenario. However, if you want to make something easy for the property owner, it's expensive, an additional cost that they might not necessarily be anticipating. And then my second question is in terms of the Grand Ronde Tribe. Why does the Grand Ronde Tribe have jurisdiction over my property, for example? My jurisdiction should fall under City of Oregon City. Why do I have to write a letter to Grand Ronde requesting permission to make changes to my property? Those are my questions. Thank you for your time.
Good question. Good questions. So you don't have to write a letter. Staff takes care of it when you do development. So it's just purely a notification system. And it's if they're aware that there might be some artifact that you might find while you're digging, then they just tell you you should be on extra alert. So they don't have jurisdiction over your property, but there is state law that applies to if you find an artifact, then you need to stop work and address it at that point. So there's no jurisdiction, it's more just a communication to put you on alert in case they do find something. They have, for obvious reasons, they don't have maps that say things might be here and here and here, because they don't want people to go dig those things up. And so it's on a case by case, we tell them what we're doing, and if they suspect there might be something, then they'll flag it for us. But most of the time, the State Historic Preservation Office holds the secret map, so.
One, I guess, final question. There've been a lot of changes to properties over the decades that, people have been living there. When was this policy implemented?
The notification to the tribes? 2010 is ringing a bell, but I'll have to look. We've done a lot of code amendments lately, but 9 or 10 is at the top of my head, but I can follow up with your contact information, let you know. Yeah, it was at the request of a city commissioner at the time, wanted to make sure that we put people on alert, that there are sensitive areas and that they do need to be aware when they are digging. So yeah, that was Commissioner James Nacita at the time put it in there, but it's a good provision to have communication.
Yeah, and that's another thing. There's not a lot of communication about these events. I did not see anything. I just found out from word of mouth from a friend that's part of a neighborhood association. I didn't see anything on different websites or whatnot, and I had a very difficult time. I couldn't find the historic overlay at all, so anyways.
Thank you.
Oh, hi. I'm Patty Webb. I live in Kenema, specifically 310 3rd Avenue, right on Coffee Creek. I wanted to talk about the fencing regulations because the fine tuning of the fencing regulations is really meaningless without any enforcement. The fence next to me violates all 3 overlays that we're both in. It does not fit the historic codes. Both houses are registered historic homes. There are already photos right on the website showing barricade style fence, which is what it is. There are notifications that it's against code to cut trees without a permit. That was done. And nothing has been done about this. It's having an effect on the neighborhood because there are some neighbors that have followed the codes. They've been very careful to make very nice, appropriate fences, and they're pretty angry when they see this done and nothing is done about it, especially since the purpose was made very clear that it was to hide Coffee Creek from the neighborhood. They don't appreciate that either. It's a very hostile situation. This fence is right now on 3 sides. It violates the property line on all 3 sides. It violates the right-of-way on 2 sides. It goes clear over the right-of-way into my property on my side. It's over 6 feet tall, up to about 8 feet in some areas, because grade is considered this tree stump that he cut off, that he uses to measure his height from, or the pile of garbage that he threw there and measured from. So until some of these things are taken care of, all of this arguing about how high the fences should be or where they should be is really meaningless. So I would like to know how some of the enforcement is going to be done, because right now what the situation is that unless a neighbor complains, nothing is done. And there are some neighbors that we know that are going to have their way because they have friends downtown, because they're mean and nasty and yell, and they'll take revenge. So nobody calls on these people. And then if somebody gets mad at somebody else, or there's somebody that won't stand up for themselves, they're going to get turned in, and there's nothing they can do about it. So that situation has created a lot of animosity in the neighborhood. And at times it really seems kind of purposeful, because people tend not to call because they know it's going to cause neighbor problems. So the violator just goes ahead and violates and flips off the neighbor. So I would really like to hear about how these codes are going to be enforced.
Good questions and statements. You're right, we're not everywhere, and we don't see all the violations. We rely on the community to
Reported
help.
repeatedly, and nothing is done, that's a poor excuse.
Yeah, there is a couple of fences specifically that were in code enforcement and are still in code enforcement, and we put them on hold until we could complete the historic review board policy. There were 3, and your neighbor's fence is one of them for one location.
So the existing fence, will that have to follow the old regulations, or will that be expected to follow the new regulations, because it violates both of them?
We can talk a little more online, but the new fences are the policies are applied to the new fences, and you can maintain existing fences. So, yeah, we can talk a little bit more offline, but this applies to new fences, so it does apply to that new segment, the material.
It was in violation when it was built, and it's in violation of the new regulations.
Yeah, we did the same thing when we did membrane structures. We had some known violations and we put them on hold because we knew we were going through regulations. And they've been on hold for a long time, in that case too. But we put them on hold till we knew where the community wanted to land on these, and if they decided that the thing was
Community is
allowed.
talking about it because those people have been in communication. And pretty soon, the people that this is being done to are gonna stick together. And I think it would be better to handle it now than to put it off and let it get worse. Because putting off situations like this just makes them worse. And these have been going on for a long time, some of them years.
So we do have an active code enforcement case on the one you're mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to public comment, and we have one, Karen Blaha.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Karen Blaha, and I'm a member of the Kanema Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, and I'm also the association's representative to the Chiefs Citizen Advisory Group. And at our last group meeting, Chief Band briefed us on the status of the community public safety building that's underway. And speaking about the plan for a memorial for Oregon City's fallen officer, Robert Libke. And one of the architects had mentioned the possibility of bronzing Officer Libke's boots. The chief was concerned that there would be no money for that because there had already been cutbacks in the budget and some of the planning. But I'm here tonight to report that the Kanema Neighborhood Association, about 10 days ago, unanimously endorsed its leadership to have a fundraising campaign to raise the money so that we could bronze Officer Libke's boots. And to begin this, the neighborhood also unanimously approved the donation of $500 to start the fund. It looks at this point that the boots would be about $1,600 to bronze. That's today's prices. And I'd expect that there will be other costs as well for installation or whatever they plan to do with the boots. Additionally, Kenema resident Dennis Anderson, a guy you know well, I think, and a fantastic artist, well-known and highly talented, has agreed to paint a portrait of the boots once they are bronzed. And the idea for that would be to eventually present that portrait to Officer Libke's widow and daughter. She was in her mommy's womb when her daddy was killed, and that was just heartbreaking. So my point here today is to encourage and to hope that other neighborhood associations will join us in this effort so that we could make it a community-wide effort. And, it would, even the tiniest contribution would matter, so that we could say that it is a community-wide effort to support our police department and to honor Officer Libke and the family's incredible contribution to the safety of this community. So our representatives, Dennis Anderson and Linda Basinger, can keep you up to date on this as we progress. But I do hope you will join us. I hope you go back to your associations and encourage them to participate. And, even $1 for the boots would be just wonderful, so we could have 100%. And thanks so much for your time and attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and it's well worth.
Thanks.
Next item is the staff liaison update on questions from the last meeting.
They're attached to the agenda, and I don't have anything else to add to that.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about the Seeing none. General business, work plan update.
I do not have an update on that either. Whatever was attached in the agenda.
Okay.
Are there questions that the committee had about the work plan update, or are you comfortable continuing it till next meeting?
We can continue it.
Okay. Let me know if there's anything that was missing from here that you were interested in.
Okay. So,
I've had a number of people ask the question about what's going to happen with the old Olson Drug vacant lot. It's such a beautiful street with the flowers and all the businesses well kept. And that lot, you can't improve a chunk of cement. I just wondered if there's any word on any updating for that property.
I haven't heard anything on that site for a very long time. I will write this down on the list for items for next meeting and make sure that I get you an update. I don't think that there's anything that's happened recently that there's active there. I'll let you know.
Are there any provisions that can be put into place to make it something happen?
There's currently no violations against the planning code or the building code, so it meets our requirements. We do have nuisance provisions, but from my understanding, I don't think that that would apply. Code enforcement is looking within the next year or two at revising their nuisance regulations to look at derelict buildings. And so maybe there might be some more conversations in there as well. But
Well, it has been cleared and it, but it's just sad
the
to
city,
see that in the middle of our neighborhood.
right, the city doesn't own it. I've not heard of anyone wanting to develop it, and we haven't done anything further on it. Yeah.
Okay, next item, approval of the minutes. So we have the draft minutes from October and December.
And you should have a bunch more minutes coming. We've, have had some trickiness with our minutes, but now, we hired another consultant to help boost us forward on your minutes, so you should start to see more coming up.
Open for a motion.
I'll move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Moved by John, seconded by Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain.
Thank you.
We've approved the minutes. Time for roundtable. We'll start with Rachel.
Good evening, Rachel Lyle Smith, City Commissioner, and also your CIC liaison. I think Laura passed around, have you passed this around?
That will be an email that's going out to them tomorrow.
Okay, so you will get this tomorrow. This is essentially similar to what Christina had sent out, and I think the last 2 months, starting to give you all kind of an update, a running list of all the like major projects and things that are coming, concerts in the park, extended hours at the library. I think a lot of these things you've heard about, so since they're coming in your email box, I don't need to go through them. So look for that. I mean, I think most of this stuff you have heard about. We mentioned our adoption of the budget at the last meeting, or Tony mentioned it. Myers Road Extension Project is still going, is still underway. We had the pavement maintenance update at our last meeting. Lots of pavement projects that are proposed that will affect your neighborhoods. The 99 tunnel illumination project, that work is still going on, so you may see some traffic delays there. And so that's kind of most of the stuff that's on here that you'll get tomorrow via email. The couple of things I was gonna mention, the code amendments for equitable housing. We've been working on these for, well, I've been working on them since January, since I got elected, and Laura's been working on them for much longer. And so I'm happy to say that they are moving forward. We have a couple of items that the commission pulled that we're still working on that are not finalized. And so I just want to daylight that here to make sure everybody knows. The items we're still working on are shelters, food carts, and building heights in the downtown design district. Those are the three main ones. I'm sure there will maybe be some minor cleanup of things we missed or spelling errors or something like that. That was the fourth item, correct?
Yeah, and did you say short-term rentals?
No.
Yeah.
That's the other one, short-term rentals. I guess I just want to make you all aware. For me personally, I'm still looking for input on all of those items. I think we're all still I think all of the commissioners are still very invested into these conversations. These are kind of some of the hot topics. Other than, not that to say that the other ones weren't, but these were the last remaining items that the city commission didn't feel were really ironed out and didn't feel totally comfortable with moving forward with them. So we still have work to go on those. So I think that's happening over the next couple of months. So if you're interested in those items, I guess I would say just look for the meeting agendas, so where we're gonna be talking about them. I think we're gonna have some work sessions where we'll be talking specifically about these items to try to work on them.
Yeah,
Do you have anything more to add on that one?
you'll see one of those topics per work session for the next few months before the commission. So we're starting with permanent food carts and mixed use downtown in August.
So, and then the only other thing I'll mention, I think a lot of people have probably heard about the prospective buyer of the Blue Heron site, being the Grand Round Tribe. I would just say at this point, I think there's more questions than answers. They are a prospective buyer. They're going through their due diligence. They are reaching out to all of the partners. I have not met with them yet personally. I know we have our team is going to meet with them, I think, for the first time this week. So they have met with Metro. So they are going around and reaching out to all of the partners. They are still doing their due diligence. Nobody on the commission will have probably any more answers than that. We, you know, they are in the driver's seat and they are in a relationship with the owner of the property at this point in time. So, a lot of folks are talking about if there's gonna be a casino and if there's gonna be this, we have no idea. We are a long way from that, from what I can see. And so, so I just kind of wanted to daylight that. I don't know if, I imagine everybody's probably heard about that and read the papers and saw there's quite a number of articles about it. And that's kind of the update that we have on that.
I was told, just for state reference, that a tribe can only have one casino legally in the state. Is that?
I heard that too. I don't know what the state rules are on that personally. I'm not a lawyer, so.
What was the question?
If the tribes are only allowed to have one casino in the state of Oregon, I don't know the state rules on that, so I can't.
They say that they want to diversify. The other question I had, what was it? Sorry, my mind. Currently, the state's going through like changing code at the state level for residential homes, single-family homes. Will that affect us in terms of you guys making a decision? Like if your decisions are made on multi-dwellings, will city override state or will state override city?
State will override city.
Okay.
State always trumps city. Feds trump state. That's how that works. Goes all the way down. And so we are moving forward with our code amendments, and I'm sure Laura can be happy to comment on. I will tell you the bills did pass. House Bill 2001, which is the one about the single family zoning. It did pass. I don't know, you can comment immediately if these code amendments are already in compliance.
They're not.
They're probably not, so maybe a little early to tell
There's
as well.
portions of the code amendments that are to allow ADUs, but of course, we've allowed them since 2004. There's some provisions that further comply. The code amendments are up for their second reading on Wednesday, and so then they would be effective 30 days later on August 2nd. If the legislature gets signed in, or if the bill gets signed in, then those would ultimately apply. But one thing I think that is important is it may require more densities in single-family zones, but the process that we just went through identified what that looks like, feels like. So exactly what do duplexes have to look like and things like that. We now have provisions for that. So whether the use categories are required to be changed from the state, at least we've prepared enough to know that if you're gonna do a 3 and 4plex, here's the guidelines that we all agree on as a community, over the past couple of years or year and a half, that we want to work. So we're not jamming through something at the end just to meet the states. We're not defaulting to any base code or anything, but we probably will have to make some amendments It doesn't, our code now doesn't allow 3 and 4 plexes or duplexes in single-family zones. It does allow corner duplexes.
See, on Roosevelt, we're having an issue because DHS is going to become a full facility on Malala in 2020. So we already have a parking issue because we're a single lane street. We have multiple dwellings on the other side of it. So this does affect neighborhoods, you know, the quality. Like, we have kids that want to play on the street and be in one lane and there's cars zipping by. So I guess these changes, if the state does it at a level without considering what it does to smaller neighborhoods, I guess it's going to have a big impact, and it could have negative one. So
I would say yes. I would say at the state level, it definitely was a contentious bill. It had a lot of pushback, and even up until, I mean, I got briefed on it today at my day job, and I know that it was contentious all the way up until it passed Sunday evening. It was one of the last bills, and we actually last week didn't think it was going to pass. So it remained this big question mark all the way through the session. It had a gazillion amendments trying to work it through. I would be surprised if it's not appealed, the decision, if the ruling is appealed, just because of trumping home rule for cities and our ability to, you know, dictate what we do within our city limits. So we'll kind of just see how it plays out. I think Laura's addressed it as far as we will likely have to come back and amend our code. But yeah, the state, this is one where it's similar to previous bills that the state has passed. And that's been one of the biggest pushbacks that cities, and there were quite a number of cities in the League of Oregon Cities and the Association of Oregon Counties that were all pushing back pretty hard on that bill, trying to keep it from being passed, or at least trying to make revisions to it. So, and it changed shape quite dramatically over the course of the period, but the end result is still the end result. Yes.
thank you for the information.
That's all I have.
All right. I just wanted to update you on the Beaver Creek Road concept plan implementation. So back in 2006, we rezoned, we did a concept plan for the area opposite the high school on Beaver Creek Road and that around there. And we are now getting around to actually zoning it to implement the vision of the plan that was adopted. And that is going to the city commission for a work session in August, just to look at this lane width configuration on Beaver Creek, so kind of quasi-related, and then also to look at how we acquire park, which is a little bit different on that. But then after that meeting, you'll see it sort of move forward through planning commission, city commission. But next meeting is August 7th, and then planning commission is scheduled for August 12th and 25th. Also, a couple of updates on what we've been reviewing lately, just through the planning division office. The police department did get approved last week for the new building at Mount Pleasant. And then also today we approved the OSU extension building at the corner of Warner Milne and Beaver Creek Road as well, kind of next to the Shaver building, so a different spot. But if you have any questions about any development that is going on, you can always go to our website. There's a link at the very bottom to development projects, or you can always just give us a call. That's it.
I guess you're it.
While she's looking for her notes, can I make one more comment? We had the groundbreaking ceremony for the new police court facility and last week, which was a really nice event, although we were all blinded by the sun trying to watch the speaker. I don't know if anybody saw pictures, but if they saw any pictures of us, they had all of the people facing the podium as you normally would, and the podium. And so we were literally all sitting in the sun trying to watch whoever was speaking, and we were all sitting like this, but anyway. I think the main thing is construction fence has gone up. If you've driven by the Mount Pleasant Elementary School, that construction is starting. If you talk to your neighborhoods, try to alert them or let them know that so that they won't be alarmed, that you know, if your neighborhood wants to get briefed on that project, if it hasn't already. It's a pretty significant deconstruction of an old building in Oregon City, as well as the new construction of a new facility for our police department and the municipal court. So I would encourage your neighborhoods to have like a short presentation on it if you're not aware of it, or if you think maybe your neighborhood may be alarmed by seeing the construction fences and stuff happening there. So if you get any inquiries about that, that's what is happening. So
Would it be helpful if we sent out a version of just the plans they submitted? There'll be conditions that tweak it, but you can see what the initial start was. I can do that with the Olson's update as well.
I think I bought her some time for her notes.
Okay. So the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association Steering Committee met last month. And we had 4 different land use issues to deal with. The major one was there's a proposal to build, I think it's a 5-bedroom home on 5th and Monroe. And there were some issues with that one. So they're in the preliminary stages of presenting their plan. Another one was on 16th and Van Buren, a problem with the retaining wall being in the wrong zone area. And another one had to do with a fence that did not meet the code. We turned that one down. Another one was a roof on a rear deck, and we approved that one. Let's see, we talked about the library community room after hours policy and got that updated. And we decided, after having had the talk from the mayor of Milwaukee about their climate action plan, to encourage inclusion of a climate action plan in the Oregon City livability goals. So we're going to pursue that. We will be selling snow cones at the concerts in the park, which start on the 11th, on Thursdays. And our next meeting is July 10th, which will be the Wednesday instead of our normal Thursday, because the 4th is on Thursday. And our guest speaker will be Siobhan Taylor, talking about the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition. So that's kind of exciting. One thing I wanted to point out, I got this really neat answer guide in the mail, and there's a correction, major correction. The date for the National Night Out is listed as August 7th instead of August 6th. It's on page 20. So. And do you have anything?
Well, I just have one thing in it. Last Monday, I got my Mondays mixed up and I was here. And so I attended the planning committee meeting. And one thing I'd like to say about the development on the Mount Pleasant school property is that at this time, they're not developing the whole area so that there still will be some place for kids to play. It'll be just an open area, I think, but the McLaughlin neighborhood's a real park-oriented group of people, and it was very good to see that until there may be some other development years down the road, there's still space for ball games or tag. Anyway, I appreciated that.
Kenema, first, a thank you to McLaughlin and the library. We had our meeting at the library a couple weeks ago, and that went well. We had a very good presentation by Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, and that was very informative, and one that I think we should revisit and consider within the neighborhoods on how we deal with ivy and invasive plants, and that whether it became a community action within the neighborhoods or volunteerism within the neighborhoods, I think there's something there that should be addressed as opposed to using other forms that would be sort of harmful to the environment since everything washes down to the water. And I think there's a growing concern, certainly with a number of the neighbors in Kenema, that there are alternatives and that we'd be interested in like pursuing them. And maybe with the help of the city, there's something that we can kind of come to terms with. The other thing we also have to thank the, last week we had the asphalt slurry within our neighborhood. And so we were warned, like you should be, of what city plans to do. So kudos go out to Jason Thornburg for coming to our neighborhood and presenting the proposal on when the dates were due for this treatment on the roadway, extending all the time and effort, explaining and answering questions on, the inconvenience and how long it would take and all the worry about it not coming through or coming to pass. And actually it went very well. Since I live right there and I'm witness to the whole thing and it goes up and down my street, I must say that the Black Line Incorporated, I guess the person contracted out to do it, did a great job. They had a number of trucks, and you know how, if those are familiar with Kenema, it's very narrow roads, and to navigate through there with these big, large trucks, one of which is sort of melting this asphalt material, and then having their guys, multiple guys, going about spreading it, did it in a timely fashion, and in due time, 6 hours plus, it was, you could walk on it as people in the neighborhood did. And I just think they presented their case, they told us what to expect, and it happened the way they explained it. And I think that's a good thing. And I think other little neighborhoods that they would be inclined to do this, I think they should be happy that this is a good outfit and they did a great job. And by the end of the day, people were back using the roadway, parking their cars on the curbs and wherever. Parks were being used again. So anyway, good news for that. Last thing that I could say, in just sort of a reminder, is that we have the annual picnic, which now has become like a nice little adventure on the water. We have within our ranks, our neighborhood, we have a couple gentlemen who have created a electric boat kind of business, and you sort of like participate in it, and I think they're in about the second year. Is this correct? And so we have an event on Saturday, August 17th, between 11 and 3 p.m. And, you could take 12 people on these little boats. You sort of do it yourself. It goes at a nominal speed. You're not going to make any wakes. And you go out to the falls and turn again. And we're going to have the neighborhood join us there, those who sort of sign up for this. And we're going to have our little, thank you to the neighborhood, combining both a business within our neighborhood as well as this event to join people together and have a time on the water between 11 and 3 on the 17th of August. And you're all welcome to come out and take a ride or just maybe have a hot dog. I don't know what we're going to have, but something along those lines. And that's all I have. Thanks.
And just mention, Jerry had a electric boat tour for the OCBA last month.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah. And it was quite nice until we were stopped by the police. But other than that, it was a good time was had by all.
We did have a wonderful time.
And Park Place, we had a steering committee meeting on June 17th. I was kind of missing, Bob may have some updates on that. I don't remember. The important part was we discussed the Metro Enhancement Grant that we got for refurbishing the Park Place Park. So we got almost $50,000, and it'll be combined with city park funds to refurbish the playground there. And we will do some other work and putting together the project plans, and we will have a ribbon cutting and grand opening next summer. So we'll find out how bad it's going to hit our backs and knees. So, pass it on.
We had a steering meeting on June 11th concerning where we were approved by our neighborhood to have signs made general for our neighborhood and also for our neighborhood picnic that we can kind of insert a little slot of a flyer of what's going on. So we're buying 6 of those, and we talked about our neighborhood picnic in terms of, we're doing it August 17th also, from 1 to 4 p.m. and focused on our neighborhood, where we're gonna do hot dogs and try to build our neighborhood association up so people know we exist and try to get people to meet each other. So I think we're talking about, obviously, hot dogs. Grocery Outlet is donating the hot dogs. We're gonna have maybe some play on the play structure, obviously. I'm gonna bring like a parachute for the kids to play. And we're gonna hope to build that up. So other than that, nothing new. Did I cover? Yeah.
Well, we're pretty quiet right now. Not much happening. Middle of August, we have a executive committee meeting to discover things we want to deal with in the neighborhood and what's going on. Our next meeting is in September. Everything was Beaver Creek, but that's kind of quiet right now until we get the last things going on. So pretty quiet neighborhood right now.
Okay, tomorrow night we have our general neighborhood meeting, which is called a picnic. And we're going to have it at Hillendale Park, 6:30 start time. We have the shelter out there in case the weatherman wants to play games with us. And part of our dilemma is it's good to have the picnic coming up, but you noticed Roy Harris is not here tonight, was not here. And he's been having some sickness or illness problems that we don't have a description, and we wouldn't divulge what it is, but he's been spending more time in the ER room in the last couple of 2 to 3 weeks than he has been at work. He's a very dedicated individual. He's very good at chairing the neighborhood association. He keeps track of all these details, way more than I've ever been able to do. But he's also very determined that he can get it done. But medical conditions are preventing him from getting it done, so he sent us a email that he thought he was going to have to ask for a leave of absence, medical leave of absence. Just couldn't get the work done. Well, as soon as we found that out, we got back to him and says, no, I don't think that's what you need. You need to put your #1 priority on getting well and let someone else do the neighborhood meetings and things like that. So we fell behind there in 2 weeks, but I think we've got a pretty reasonable plan made up for the meeting tomorrow night. Our normal practice is we have everybody bring their own meal, drink and utensils and that type of stuff. And the neighborhood will furnish watermelon cookies and bottled water and utensils and stuff like that to make it work. But one of the things that caught us is we didn't get very much notification out to people that whether we're gonna have it or not. And here we are 2 days from the picnic, and we're now gonna have it, and it's going forward one way or another. So I would like to invite anybody here tonight in the CIC or the audience, or communications methods being what they are, maybe on TV, that if you're interested at all, show up. We plan to have, Jim Band is going to speak about the police station and all of its happenings. We do have a land use application going on that we'll hear a little bit about. And we've got the Clackamas Fire District 1, the big fire truck coming out to the park and might be an attraction for the younger generation, kids and things like that. So if you've got some time tomorrow night, but stop by and join us. We'd more than like to see you show up, and certainly welcome. And we'll try to do a better job planning all this next time.
What time?
Pardon?
What time?
6:30 at Hillendale Park,
Tuesday, tomorrow night?
Tuesday, tomorrow night,
Thank you.
at the shelter, you know, the one covered shelter
We'll
there.
find it.
You'll find it. Show up and see what we can do. Thank you.
Only thing I can add to what Dennis said is that Kenema's having a booth for the National Night Out, and we will be raising money for the booth. So come by, drop some money. We're also having a raffle, so there's a possibility of winning something there as well. So that's it.
And when was it?
That's the National Night Out, and
Oh,
that,
you're having it at National.
we're having a
Okay, all
booth
right.
there, yeah.
And we have two people who've been nominated as representatives from different neighborhoods that are here tonight. And do you have anything to add to the roundtable? Bring one up so we can get it on.
I'd like to pass on a couple things here for you. I'm Jerry Herman, I'm a member of the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association from its founding time. And Brian Boyce, who hasn't been attending, he's still interested in the neighborhood association, but I'll be honest with you, he kind of got burned out with the Natural Resource Committee, which I'm a founding member of too. He was the chairman during a lot of things that we were going through, and then his health subsided. So they asked me to represent the association. What I have here for you, I'll talk about in just a second. Our boundary, if you're aware of it, is basically the turn of 99E by the Blue Heron Mill, clear down the river to the Clackamas, up the Clackamas to almost Forsyth Road, and everything that's flat ground, so shall we say, up to the hillsides of Holcomb and so forth. It's really an area of almost no residential people, until now. We have 300 new residents in Phase 1, Edgewater of Blackman Cove. And over the years, what we worked on was interfacing with the developer, the first developer, and then the newest developer to make sure that the cove could be done in a way that was feasible. There was a lot of things that people were not thinking about, reality check, that needed to be passed on to them, and my knowledge of that area is quite extensive, and so was Brian's. The reason I gave this to you is that, well, first of all, our next meeting is the 24th of July. We have a man that I think is going to become the chairman, who's a member, well, he's a part of Edgewater Phase 1, and he was a planning director for Clackamas County for 25 years. His name is Gary Spanovich. He's a very effective man. And his wife is an environmental planner that travels the country doing planning for big projects and so forth. And so they live in Phase 1. And so I think that's going to help with the future representation for you. I want to just tell you a couple things. A picture on the front, the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association supported this idea. Downtown businesses that are in the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association supported it. This was the effort to begin to reseed the bluff, to seed the bluff with wildflowers instead of weeds. Weeds have been growing there very effectively for 30 some years. And the amazing thing about wildflowers is they love a stressed environment. And where there's a stressed environment, typically weeds don't do as well. Parks Department here under Phil Lewis and John Waverly helped us by spraying the entire area several times this last fall. And we came in January and had to fabricate special equipment. You see that picture on the top there, 20 15, 18, and 10-foot rakes, hoes, and cultivators in order to have the young people, 20 of them were involved in this, and members of the neighborhood association participated too, some, to help cultivate and prepare the ground. I was thinking about leaving for Bolivia because if this didn't come up, I was in trouble. If these plants didn't grow. Because it was a Metro Enhancement Grant, and yes, they're growing really well. And they're beginning their reseeding process now. We have two mayors, the former mayors involved in this too. Ken Mitchell from the past might ring a bell with some of you. His daughter Carrie owns some property near the elevator. Judge Ron Tom and Susie Penn, his wife, are adopting in Section 2, and what they're adopting is basically some watering that's going to help establish things this first phase. Once things get established, then they'll renew themselves. And the Downtown Merchants, Settlers Corner, the Abernathy Development, Abernathy Conference Center et al., Abernathy Development, help provide some of the seed. Seed is very expensive. Several $1,000s have gone into the seed. But thank goodness the plants know how to reseed themselves. And so hopefully this will be all renewing. Anyway, this kind of gives you a picture of what it looks like. The other thing that I wanted you to be aware of was Two Rivers came alongside the End of the Oregon Trail with my organization and other volunteers, and the plastics is a big issue. You're all worried about plastics. I mean, we should be. I'm not saying we shouldn't. There is a rock at the end of the Oregon Trail, which is not a rock. It's the equivalent of about 100,000 polystyrene material, recycled materials. At the backside of the end of the Oregon Trail is a structure 30 feet long that represents Independence Rock. It's made of recycled materials by Miles Molded Fiberglass. We installed that. Your Parks Foundation is out there collecting, as you know, beverage containers, water bottles. They have collected 150,000 at your concerts in the park. 150,000 containers. That represents a lot of recycled material. And you'll hear a report about that from them in the future. I just want you to know that we're working on that subject, the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association, with the Parks Foundation and others. And at the end of the Oregon Trail, there are oxen now that don't do what oxen do, breathe in this case, because these are made out of recycled fiberglass. So I thought I'd share that with you. The last thing was a aerial view of Clackamas Cove and a white line that outlines the boundary of an area that we're working on under a Metro grant. My objective is not just to involve 12 to 20 youth. I think we can do about 18 this year in that project to remove invasives. There's still a lot of illegal dump sites down there. There are homeless camps that were in there that are transitioning, shall we say, because we were present. But to get that part of Clackamas Cove, which is not a part of the intensive development, really cleaned up for public use. It's right next to Clackamas Park. And the reason I wanted to tell you about this is that Edgewater 2, I spent some time with Edgewater Development, Phase 2, and we now have a core of people, a core of discovery that are willing to go in there and be a part of the effort with volunteers to keep that area up. That's what I was really hoping to see, was that the neighborhood association down there, Two Rivers et al., would begin to adopt that area. And part of their duties, there's an area that's kind of highlighted in yellow, is to hand throw in a rock concert gravel from a channel that is occluded each year by the floods and allow the tide to come back in and keep the cove healthy. This is a Lake Oswego style development. It needs to have that quality of water and not be posted no human contact, which it has been twice. Last year we spent 4 hours with about 40 people and moved 7 yards of gravel, and that was enough for the tide to come back in and keep it healthy. It did not get posted for no human contact last year. We're into simple things, so I just wanted you to know that's the things that we're kind of doing with volunteers, with my organization and others, to try to establish a footprint for the improvement of our community. So thank you.
My name is Bob LaSalle, and I'm with the Park Place Neighborhood Association, and I was really pleased to hear that Jerry and others are picking up the leadership for the Two Rivers. Some of us, in some meetings I've attended, we call it the Two Rivers and One Creek Association. I'm glad to hear that, but it brings up another issue that the CIC recently voted to remove Brian Boyce from the CIC because of his unfortunate lack of participation. However, there is a technicality in the code that governs the CIC, which states the CIC cannot remove a person from the CIC. That has to be done by the city commission. And so I'd like to see either Mr. Way or Commissioner Lyle Smith to maybe put it on the maybe consent agenda or whatever to take care of that technicality.
We have the, sorry, the item that was before, the request is of the CIC to remove Mr. Boyce is tentatively scheduled on the CIC agenda, and he's aware of that, and the neighborhood's aware of it. But it sounds like they're looking at potentially replacing a CIC member for him. And so we delayed it just a little bit because they're meeting later this week. And so I hope that they'll get a recommendation of somebody else to appoint in his place, and then we can just.
Oh,
put that
yeah,
on the
so I
city
wouldn't even
commission.
have to go through the city.
Yeah, so we may,
Gotcha.
yeah,
That would be easier.
yeah, it'll be nice.
Yeah.
I have some here.
Oh, I'm pleased to be back on the CIC as an alternate to Park Place. I've been away for a while, but here I are. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. If nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting.